Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright people, review of the week time. So, we'll talk about the fights that happened first, that happened over the last few days. So, let's start with Lomachenko, Richard Comey. Now, I was right in picking Lomachenko to win. I did think he might wear down and stop Richard Comey late on in this fight, and in the 7th round he was at his closest to stopping him. Lomachenko actually urged the corner of Richard Comey to jump in and stop the fight to prevent him from having further punishment. I have to say Lomachenko looked very good in this fight. Now, although you could say, well, Teofimo Lopez did a better job, Lomachenko went the distance, Teofimo got rid of him in 2 rounds. Yeah, I'll admit that, but Lomachenko still looked very good in winning anyway. Lomachenko, I had worries about him after the Teofimo Lopez fight. I did, because Lomachenko, even prior to that fight, had injuries with his shoulder. He's been around a long time, even though he's only 32, 33. You remember how long he's been in boxing? Over 300 amateur fights, two Olympic games. He's been around a long time. So at some stage, you got to figure the miles are going to add up. Even though he's not been in terribly grueling fights, he's been in that many, all them camps. You got to wonder how long is he going to be at his peak. Well, I suspect that Teofimo Lopez fight, potentially it could have been the fact that he just got his tactics wrong at the start of the fight, and say that the judges' scorecards were way too wide in Teofimo Lopez's favour. He won the fight, but I think it was too wide. 119, 109, one judge had it, remember that? And I think now, looking from what I've seen from Lomachenko, he's looked a lot better in his last 2 fights. Like against Nakatani, I really had reservations how Lomachenko would look, because I was wondering, coming back from a loss, and a more clear loss than the first one, than against Salido anyway, how would he look? Looked grand in that fight, looked very good, looked re-energised in that fight against Nakatani, and then again in Comey looked extremely good again. Movement was on point, barely lost it. Comey had little spots of success in this fight. I would say the 8th round was one of the rounds you could give to Comey, because Lomachenko, I think, was just kind of, not wanting to exert too much, because he exerted quite a bit in that 7th round. So I think he wanted to just kind of, rally himself for an attack late on. Comey was able to survive. Comey's very durable, he's tough. Yes, he was stopped in 2 rounds by Teofimo Lopez. Lopez is a tremendous puncher. He was able to walk Comey onto a counter, and that's how he got rid of him. So I have to say, Lomachenko 135, he still is one of, if not the best 135 pounders. He doesn't have a title at the minute, but I wouldn't at all be shocked if the WBO name him as mandatory challenger for Kambosos. Him against Kambosos, that's a good fight. Him against all the lightweights, even a rematch with Teofimo Lopez, although I don't think that's going to happen. I think if Lopez will move up to 140. But again, him against Devin, and Devin is another fighter who might be tight at the weight as well. I could see these fighters going to 140. Nevertheless, him against Kambosos, I'd like that fight. I actually think that's a very good fight. Lomachenko versus Kambosos, I'd like to see that. I don't know. You see, Lomachenko kind of has to get himself into a mandatory position. I don't know, if you're in Team Kambosos, would you just give Lomachenko a voluntary? I don't know, would you? Maybe for the right amount of money, if Bob Arum throws a bit of money at you and says, give my guy a voluntary. Maybe he would, but I think Loma will need to go down the mandatory road, definitely. For sure. Who else was on that card? Jared Anderson against Teslenko. Now, Alexander Teslenko, some people were kind of a bit high on him at the start of his career, and then he got knocked out by Shondell Winters. Now, Shondell Winters is a man who was knocked out by Joe Parker, although in that fight he actually was... He was live in the Joe Parker fight, but then he got absolutely steamrolled by Alan Babbage in 2 rounds on Fight Camp. I think that was on the Povetkin Whyte first fight undercard. So you're getting... Winters is old as dirt now at this stage. There was a bit of talent. You can see there's talent there, but he's short. He's not a big heavyweight. I think he weighed in below 100 or below 200 pounds for the Babbage fight. So he's knocked out by him a couple of years back. So that's not a good sign. And Big Baby Anderson, he just went in, did a job, blew Teslenko out. Anderson is looking very good. I like his speed, I like his punching power, I like his confidence. There's a lot to like about Big Baby, the real Big Baby as he calls himself. We all know who the other one is, but we call him Big Farmer on the channel. So Jared Anderson, I'm really he's one of the most exciting heavyweight prospects to come out of America I've seen in a while. You know, I remember when Wilder came out, he was exciting. Don't get me wrong, but he's very crude. And I know me and a lot of others at the time when he was up and coming, you know, and like pretty much up until he fought Calvin Price, we were kind of like, he can punch definitely, but he's so crude. I remember George Arias when he came on the scene. He was exciting because he was so energetic, but he's really kind of stagnated a bit since then. But Anderson is just, you know, when you look at him and you see all the attributes he has, you just think this guy's going to be impressive in years to come, and I really do think he will be. Nonita Donaire made a mandatory defense of the WBC title last night, won via body shot. Nonita Donaire is pushing 40, and still at bantamweight anyway, tremendous puncher. You know, going into that World Boxing Super Series, that really was probably the best thing he could have ever done, because he made an absolute rake of money. He was in some great fights, and it reinvigorated him. You know, at 126 pounds, those guys were just too big. You know, I remember Frampton just put him in his place in that fight. Remember that fight they had back in 2018? Frampton just put Donaire in his place. But even Frampton was saying, this guy can still punch, even at 126. But the size of Frampton and Frampton's own power, he was able to put Donaire in his place. And, you know, again, like Nicholas Walters was just those guys were just too big, even to an extent at 122. But when he went back down to 118, the power was back, and Donaire's been looking good at that weight. Obviously, the fight that is on many people's minds is a rematch with Inoue. I'd love to see that fight the first time round. That was a brilliant fight. I'd love to see that again. This time it would be the first one was a unification, wasn't it? So this would be another unification, because the first fight was a unification. Or was it? Was it unification? I think it was, because Inoue had the IBF and Donaire had the WBA. So yeah, this would be another unification, because obviously Casemiro has the other title, or does he? Because he was meant to defend it against Paul Butler on the Probellum card on Saturday night. And big up to Probellum, they're looking very good, if I might add. They're making some signings, and personally I like the content that they're producing. I just want to put that on flight mode. I forgot to put that on flight mode. Sometimes it interferes with the mic, so I want to make sure it doesn't do that. Hopefully not. Hopefully it hasn't interfered with the mic yet. But yeah, the Probellum card was looking good. You know, I like what they're doing. Obviously 2022 is going to be a big year for those guys. We're going to see how they kind of, you know, move up the ladder. They're going to need to get a proper network. Whether they do that or not, I don't know who they'll be with, because this was on Box Nation, which was nice to kind of the Box Nation days were back for all, albeit one night. Obviously Box Nation still charge subscription, which is bizarre that anyone would pay it. No offense to them, but there's not really many fights on there anymore. You know, it was different when they were showing fights regularly. Like, they were getting the States fights, they were getting the Frank Warren cards, they were getting a couple of smaller cards, and they were showing replays. They had a lot going back about 5 years ago, but now to be charging 12 quid for pretty much nothing, and they used to have like the Bunty's box an hour, and they kind of like do reports and reviews and stuff, so they did a lot more back then. They don't do as much, so I wonder who Probellum are going to get going into the new year. Be interesting to see. Would they do a deal with Sky? Because maybe Sky have an open platform, who knows. But I like what Probellum are doing. Obviously on that card was meant to be Paul Butler versus Casemiro. Fight didn't happen. I can't remember, did Paul Butler win his fight? Because he was meant to fight Agbeko, who was old as dirt now at this stage. I can't remember the result of that fight actually. And on flight mode, of course I would. But yeah, I wonder whether they're going to reschedule that fight, because some people are saying that potentially Casemiro could be stripped. I hope that's not the case. It was a lot kind of up in the air about that. But Paul Butler fought on that card. Again, I didn't see that fight, but I did see the Donny Nietes fight. That was a 12-round split decision draw. I don't think Donny Nietes should have come back. I mean, he's nearly 40 and he's fighting at super flyweight. That is just a recipe for disaster right there. You don't see many guys fight into their mid-30s, much less pushing 40 at those weights. So Donny Nietes had a draw. I believe he thought it was a 12-rounder. He was actually told the middle of the fight was a 10-rounder. And obviously we talk about the main event, who was Sonny Edwards making a mandatory defense of his title against, I forget the guy's name, the Filipino fighter. But I did watch it, caught it up last night, and had a few glimpses at the highlights again today. And I have to say, Sonny Edwards and his trainer Grant Smith are a very good combination together. Sonny Edwards gets a lot of flack because he's quite an abrasive character. He's always giving it a bit on social media, and as he says himself, he's undefeated in the ring and on Twitter. I thought that was funny when he said that. But honestly, like, I think that some people just don't like Sonny Edwards, and I think because they don't like him as a person, they try to take away from what he actually is in the ring. And they say, like, oh, the minute he fights, Martinez, he'll get exposed, and just like his brother, he's better than his brother Charlie Edwards. That's for definite. Sonny Edwards is better, and Sonny Edwards is a very good fighter. He's got tremendous balance, he's got tremendous speed, stamina, great boxing ability. His trainer Grant Smith, the two of them just seem like a match made in heaven for boxer and coach. Sonny Edwards has a great boxing brain. If you ever hear him when they have him do punditry on BT Sports, this is a guy who knows boxing. He's sharp. He understands, how he could make a good trainer himself, could Sonny Edwards, because he really has a great grasp of what's going on in there, and he understands, what the fighters are doing. So I find Sonny Edwards gets a lot of flack because people don't like him as a character, but take that away and just look at him and appreciate what he is as a talent, because he is a very, very talented fighter. Make no mistake about it. And look, if he wasn't, I'd be saying, yeah, he runs around the ring. He's not. No, I don't think he will. And I think him against Martinez is a very competitive fight. Lest we forget, Martinez has been outboxed in fights before. Oh yes, he has. Look at him against Andrew Selby. Now, Andrew Selby, I wouldn't put him on the same level as Sonny Martinez, but go and look at their fight. Yes, Martinez won the fight. He did, no doubt about that. He won it. He stopped him by a body shot. But for the early part of that fight, he was getting outboxed by Andrew Selby. And I always found Andrew Selby as a poor man's Sonny Edwards. Because when those two were up and coming, Sonny Edwards had, I think, one or two little shaky performances, yeah. But he looked good. He impressed me from the get-go. Alright, whereas Sonny Edwards, whereas Andrew Selby was a runner. It was just, if you ever look at Selby when he was fighting, he was just a runner. He was just a complete runner. I remember his fight against the guy who fought Charlie Edwards for the title and lost. He knocked out Paddy Barnes, Christoph something Rosales or something like that his name was. You go look at that fight, that was just a case of just throwing shots, and he was literally running around the ring. Literally, I mean, he was running, backpedaling around the ring. Whereas Sonny Edwards, certain fights looked a bit shaky. He did, and I'll be the first to say he did look a bit shaky, but he's really improved, especially under Grant Smith, I have to say. So full credit to him. He looked good in that fight, and it was a routine kind of workman-like performance, but he was showing the skill that he has. So fair play to Sonny Edwards. We'll see how he goes with regard to unifications. If Frank Warren or MTK can get them, we'll wait and see. Also, Dimitri Bivol fought on Saturday, and that was a very good display for Dimitri Bivol, I thought. I only caught the first 2 rounds because I was doing a watch along to the zone cards, and I went back onto that, but I caught up on the rest of the fight this morning. And I gotta say, Bivol in this fight looked better than he did. Much better than he did against Craig Richards. I suspect the reason for it is the fact that Bivol is getting a lot more active now than he used to be. Because Bivol, when did he fight? He fought Castillo in 2019, but I can't remember. Was that the end of 2019 or the start? It was a while ago anyway. It was a while ago. It was a good long, I think it might have been like towards the back end of 2019. So he was proper and active going into the Richards fight, and to be honest, I think it showed. I think that his timing wasn't quite there, because Bivol has great timing and he's a great, just technical boxer. And for someone like that to be out of the ring as long as he was, you got to imagine he's going to be rusty. And it definitely, I think, showed in the Richards fight. But now he's been able to get that fight out of the way. That was when was that, May? And we're now in December, so about, give or take 6 months, which is kind of round about the norm for certain fighters these days. So I thought he looked very good in this fight against his opponent. He did a lot of criticism people have about Bivol is that he doesn't get a lot of knockouts. We could question his punching power. His punching power is there, make no mistake about it. He's had some one punch knockouts, he's had some good knockouts, but Bivol strikes me as someone who he's happy to go in there. If he has to go 12 rounds, he will. He'll box the guy's head off, he'll keep it at range, he'll get his jab working, which his jab is absolutely fantastic. His speed is very good, his judged distance is very good, his balance is very good, just an all-round very good fundamental boxer. And it'd be interesting to see him against someone like Callum Smith. I'd really like that. Him again, like I remember Boazzi was a name they were mentioning. I mean, no, not next year anyway. Definitely not. But Callum Smith, the two of them fought in the amateurs. There was a lot. Bivol even said at one stage he'd go down to 168 when Smith was down there before Smith fought Canelo. And him against Callum Smith, that'd be an interesting fight. I would definitely favour Dimitri Bivol, but it'd be interesting to see kind of how Callum Smith comes about, because Smith can box a little bit, but I don't think he'd be able to box with Bivol. No, it'd be interesting to see how Bivol would react to the power of Callum Smith, and vice versa, of course, because as I said, Bivol's definitely not feather fisted. Interestingly, Zuru Ramirez fights this week against Yorneski Gonzalez. I don't know why he's in the final eliminator, but he is, for a shot at Dimitri Bivol. Now, Zuru Ramirez, I think we can all assume Zuru Ramirez is going to win that fight, because Gonzalez lost to Jan Pascal in 2015, and he really went into the wilderness after that. So I can't imagine he's going to be better now than he was then. And Zuru Ramirez is a good fighter, very good fighter. So Zuru against Bivol. Now, that's a good fight, because people underestimate Zuru Ramirez. I've always said that about Zuru ever since I seen him back at 168. I think I remember when he fought Vlasov. Zuru is a very good fighter. He's a very good fighter. So him against Bivol, and Bivol's with Eddie Hearn, Zuru's with the Zone, or with Golden Boy. So they're both on the Zone. It's an easy fight to make, because they're both on the same platform. I'd really like to see that fight. I hope they can get that fight over the line. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, it's implying Zuru wins. We all expect him to. I certainly do anyway, myself. So it'll be interesting. We'll see how that goes. On Friday, we had a Mick Hennessy card where Isaac Chamberlain was fighting. He was headliner. Now, it was a great atmosphere in there, actually, mind you. I think that was... where was it? I think they said it was in Crystal Palace or something like that. But Isaac Chamberlain fought the guy Lawrence Okolie just fought on the Joshua Usyk undercard. Remember that guy? Okolie got rid of him in, I think, 2 or 3 rounds. Done a serious job on him. Shouldn't have been anywhere near that fight. Well, Isaac Chamberlain went in there, got rid of him in a round. So Chamberlain was never really known as a massive puncher. You know, he's been getting a few more knockouts as of late. And I hadn't seen Chamberlain fight since the Luke Watkins fight, which was, I think, in 2019, I think it was, or very late 2018. It was one of the two. He's been out of the ring for a while, had Chamberlain prior to 2020. And obviously he signed a long-term deal with Mick Hennessy. And I was kind of scratching my head at that, because, I mean, Mick Hennessy, he's been doing actually quite some good work with Channel 5 lately, but at the time he really wasn't doing much at all, so that was a real head-scratcher. But Chamberlain looked noticeably bigger. I remember Chamberlain looking almost like kind of having a swimmer's physique, because he was very... For a cruiserweight anyway, he was quite lean and slim, you know, and you'd imagine obviously he's making weight, but he just didn't look at all big for a cruiserweight. He looked like someone who would have fit cruiserweight very well when it was a 190 pound limit, but at 200 pounds he just seemed too small for cruiserweight but too big for light heavyweight. But he looked noticeably bigger in there than what I remember seeing him. Certainly for me, maybe it's because I haven't seen him in a few years, but he definitely seems more filled out now in the weight than he did a couple of years ago. So that was the first thing I noticed when I saw Chamberlain in the ring. I was like, oh, he actually looks like a cruiserweight now, where before he didn't. He noticeably is filled out. You know, that was very apparent to me when I seen him in the ring. Now, Chamberlain got rid of this guy in a round, which was very good. Stopped him with a body shot. A few complaints I had was Chamberlain was walking into lead left hooks from his opponent a little bit too often, and that guy didn't really have much pop on him. I think he was from Montenegro or somewhere like that, but he didn't have much pop. And I was just thinking, if he's landing lead left hooks on you, it's not a great look, because moving forward, you know, if fighters at the top echelons of the cruiserweights are landing lead left hooks on you, you're going to sleep, because most of them can all punch, and all punch really well. He called out Jack Massey, who's got an IBO title, straight after the fight. There's definitely some good fights for Chamberlain there. Him against Bill Smith is an excellent fight. Him against Tommy McCarthy be actually a very good fight. Tommy McCarthy is doing well. He lost to Bill Smith on Fight Camp, but he's still a very good fighter. So I think Chamberlain, and look, I think Chamberlain has a good chance against some of these guys. I really do. I've been impressed. The lapses in defense? Yeah, they were there, but for the most part, I was quite happy with what I saw from Chamberlain. He seems to be sitting on the shots a bit more. Definitely, has a bit more power there. Tightened up the defense a bit, but I've always said Chamberlain is a good, I haven't done many reviews on him, but Chamberlain I do like as a fighter. I think he's a good little talent. I think there's definitely ability there, but at the time I just thought he was just, whatever ability he had was being negated by his lack of size. Now it seems as though he has a little bit more size on him, so Chamberlain could be quite useful. Obviously now we have to talk about the Conor Benn fight. Now, on that undercard I want to talk about, we saw Robbie Davis Jr. Knock out Henry Lundy. Now, I didn't expect that. I see on the watch along I was watching that fight, and I was like, whoa, I thought that had 10 round points decision written all over it. Davis Jr. seems to be hitting a bit harder now he's with Shane McGuigan. That was noticeable to me. You know, Davis Jr. was never really a devastating. He was he was a fair puncher, but he wasn't really a devastating puncher, you know, not from what I saw. But having said that, from the minute that fight started, I was like, something's not right with Henry Lundy. It just does. He did not look right at all. His legs looked gone before a punch was even landed, and it was a good knockout. He knocked him out of the ring, you know, with a right hand. So there was that. Katie Taylor won against that Sharapova girl. That Sharapova, she is a cracker. God almighty, she was a cracker. But in terms of boxing, yeah, Katie Taylor did what she needed to do. I thought we were on for an upset from the first round because Sharapova got her jab working very early and looked quite good behind the jab, but Katie Taylor was able to get in behind it, land her combinations, and she kind of smashed it. Well, not smashed, but she swolled the left side of Sharapova's face up, won a points decision. They're talking about Amanda Serrano now. I'm going with Serrano in that fight personally. I do think Katie Taylor looked a bit better in this fight than her previous fights, but she has noticeably slowed down for me. Quite noticeably. And obviously in the main event, Conor Benn, I spoke about that fight already. But we got to talk. He's called out Adrian Broner in the immediate aftermath. I would not like to see that fight personally. Adrian Broner has been very inactive over the last few years, and he looks absolutely terrible at this stage. That last fight he had a couple of months back looked horrendous in that fight. His fight against Granados a few years ago looked horrendous. Adrian Broner has looked well past it these last few years. So, and they'll probably have to offer him an absolute insane amount of money to fight Conor Benn. I said it in my post-fight and I'll reiterate it again here. There's two fights I'd like to see Conor Benn in next. The first would be David Avanesian. Whether they do that or not now, a certain Hardy Quinn says Benn beats Avanesian now. Of course he'd say that. You know, that's one of the reasons why I don't like him as being a pundit on Sky. I was going to say Sky. Well, it is like Sky on the Zone, because the guy just talks absolute, you know what, horse something. But Avanesian and Benn is a competitive fight. I'd like to see it. I don't think it's as easy as that. I would go 60-40 in Avanesian's favour in terms of who I think would win, but I definitely think Benn could be competitive, may win, never know. But I'd love to see that fight. I really would. I'd like to see Avanesian versus Benn next. I think it makes sense. I think from a matchmaking point of view, gets him a European title, and then you can move on to world honours. If they don't want to go down that road, and if they want to take a risk with Conor Benn, a calculated risk. I said it in my post fight, I'll say it again here, Maurice Hooker. Calculated risk, right? Hooker's not been looking amazing lately, right? He's got, 2 losses and 3 draws. Some of them draws a bit dubious. Lost in a unification to Jose Ramirez. Knocked out in 7 by Virgil Ortiz Jr., who was a fantastic fighter, fantastic talent. It might be worth taking a punt and putting Benn in with him. Because think of it like this, right? If Benn beats Maurice Hooker, it's a good win, and it is a good win. A recent enough world champion, a guy who's only lost to 2 guys, one unified world champion and the other a future world champion, definitely. And if Conor Benn can go in, and if he loses, you've lost to a guy who's still quite relevant. You know, no shame, you can rebuild from that. If you beat him, then they're gonna go from there. Ben also mentioned Yordenis Ugas. I don't think he beats Yordenis Ugas. I think Yordenis Ugas would school Conor Benn. I really do. I think Yordenis Ugas would just jab Ben's head off. Yordenis Ugas is getting up there in age, but he is still a very talented fighter. He's tremendously skilled, comes from that Cuban background, well schooled, and you know, he's never taken serious abuse in the ring. You know, he's never been in a fight that was really grueling, that would take a lot out of him, that you think, okay, he's on his last legs. No. And Yordenis Ugas may end up having to fight Boots Ennis this year. If that's the case, if you're looking at champions and you're looking at like Crawford as a champion, would Eddie Hearn put him in with Crawford? No, I don't think he would. Spence, would he put him in with Spence? Unless Spence absolutely, and even then they'll probably be trying to get him and Crawford. Can't see it. If Yordenis Ugas happens to maybe say fight Boots Ennis first, would you put Boots Ennis in with Conor Benn? I wouldn't. I'd be like, here, you're not beating Boots Ennis, man. You're not beating that guy. I mean, if you want to try, but you ain't beating Boots Ennis. And there's no disrespect to Conor Benn. I'm just saying what I see. I think Benn's improved massively, but I have to look at the guys in the respective division and say, based upon what I've seen from Conor Benn now, do I think he'll beat any of them? And the answer is no. But do I think he could beat guys like David Avanesian? Yeah, definitely give him a chance. I wouldn't pick him, but I give him a sure chance. Do I think he could beat someone like Maurice Hooker? Yes, I do. Yes, I do think he can beat Maurice Hooker, and I will pull the trigger and try it. That's a legit. Would you say he's a top 10 welterweight? Certainly top 15. Might be worth giving it a go. You know, it might be. Let's have a little look-see at the newest. Actually, Tyson Fury was at the Lomachenko fight last night, and him and Alexander Usyk were actually in a photograph after. I wonder. What does that mean for the future? Does that mean we're looking likely to get Fury Usyk at some stage? I wonder, were they talking about potentially having a fight? Who knows? Let's have a look-see. Did anyone see that Keith Turman versus Mario Baras is reportedly agreed for January 29th? That's according to Mike Coppinger. That's over 2 years since Turman's been in the ring. Baras is not the biggest 140 pounder. He's not. I'm telling you now, he's not the biggest 140 pounder going up to welterweight to fight Keith Turman. And I don't know, it's just said reportedly to fight Keith Turman. Maybe they'll do a catch weight, you never know, 149 or something like that. I'm more interested to see how Turman looks, because Turman has had time out of the ring before, a long time out of the ring. When he won the title, when he unified with Garcia, it was May 2017. He didn't fight again until January, actually similar time, end of January 2019. Nearly 2 years. And he looked rusty against José Lopez. Obviously lost to Pacquiao in his next fight, and that's all we've seen from him. So, I mean, when Keith Turman came about first, I really liked him. You know, when he was Leonard Bundu fight was a little bit. That's when we finally saw Keith Turman kind of stop being one time, and they called him run time. But I was still always impressed with Turman. I always liked Keith Turman. But the last few years, pretty much after the Sean Porter fight, he just kind of seemed to. I don't know, it was like the hunger just left him at that stage, and he got hungry for everything but boxing, basically, because Keith Turman's blown up in between fights several times, and I don't like seeing that when fighters do that. Tony Yoka, I said this in that midweek review, that Yoka basically was meant to fight Takam, but Takam had to pull out with that fight due to an injury, so he will still fight on January 15th in Paris against Martin Bakole. That's interesting. Bakole versus Yoka. I quite like that fight. Now, I like the Takam fight too, don't get me wrong, I did. That's going to be interesting. Bakole versus Yoka in France. I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for that. Now, I would make, personally, Tony Yoka favourite. Personally, I think he's got the better chance of winning, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how he handles Martin Bakole. Different enough style to Carlos Takam. I would have liked to have seen the Takam fight as well, but we'll watch it, we'll wait and see how that goes. Liam Williams has parted ways with Dominic Ingle when they'll be trained by Adam Boot. Very different style, Adam Boot to Dominic Ingle, and Adam Boot is more, he likes guys with a bit of athleticism and to use their reflexes. I don't know if Liam Williams' style would translate very well to Adam Boot. And it's not a lot of training with Adam Boot, because he was at that press conference with Dominic Ingle before the fight got pushed back. So it's not going to be an awful lot of time to train with Adam Boot. Now, I know Adam Boot has trained Eubank before. I think he was training Eubank for the Spike O'Sullivan fight, if memory serves me correct. But it's an interesting one. I mean, okay, let's see how that goes. But yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. I just don't understand. Dominic Ingle and Liam Williams, I didn't see any issue there. But Adam Boot, I just don't know if stylistically Adam Boot is the right fit for Liam Williams. Just from a styles point of view, I don't know. Nothing against Adam Boot, but I just think stylistically, I don't know if that's a good idea. Could be wrong. You never know. Could prove me 100% wrong. Bob Arum has confirmed talks are underway for Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury. Yeah, who was it? Was it someone who quoted Tyson Fury saying that he wasn't really massively up for the fight, or what? I thought I saw a quote, someone saying that. No. I'm nearly sure someone, maybe it was someone put it in Discord or someone like that, said there was a quote from Tyson Fury who said he was struggling to get up for the Dillian Whyte fight. I don't know how we could, because I think that's a great fight. Will we get it next year? Remains to be seen. If we don't get Undisputed, I think it's I think it's the next best thing. I really do. I think it's the next best thing. If we don't get Undisputed, that is. Also, speaking of heavyweights, actually, I should say, we'll finish it with this. Deontay Wilder was kind of hinting that he may retire from boxing. I forgot to talk about that during the week, but he kind of released a message where he said, like, he wanted to keep promise to his daughter. He's done all that. He's kind of done everything he wanted to do. It's kind of hinting that maybe it's the end for Deontay Wilder. That maybe he's thinking of, other ideas. And do you know something? Deontay Wilder in the ring, I love watching him. I do. He's always in entertaining fights, but his last 2 fights, he's took a lot of abuse, especially that third Fury fight. Wilder, broken hand, probably concussed, took a hell of a lot of punches to the head. I mean, I think me and Chris Andre spoke about this, that the injuries Wilder would have suffered in that third fight specifically, and he's right when he says this, it would be akin to a car crash. And he's right, it would be. So Deontay Wilder's put himself, and that was just such a, it was a great fight, but for both men, but specifically Wilder, he took a beating in that fight against Fury. So maybe that has maybe put everything in context, and he's made bags of money. So maybe Wilder has just looked and thought, you know what, I've done enough, I've done everything I need to do, I provided for my family, I've been heavyweight champion of the world, defended the title, 10 times more, held it for many, many years. Do I need this? And look, whatever he decides to do, you got to respect him. You got to respect his decision. I like Wilder as a fighter. As a person, yeah, he said some things that I don't agree with, and he can be a bit annoying at times. But as a fighter, I've always loved watching him. One of my favourite fighters to watch. Even if, look at the Washington fight. That Washington fight was boring up until the knockout, but you're always on the edge of your seat, because with Wilder, like that, it can change. Anything can happen. And that's why I like watching him. Just for the excitement. You never knew when it was going to happen, but you knew it was going to happen. You knew a knockout was coming, or you knew a knockdown was coming. So that's why I always like Deontay Wilder. So whatever he decides to do, look, whatever's best for him. And I would just say to Deontay Wilder, think of your long-term health. You've been in 2 very tough fights. You took a lot of headshots, a lot of punishment. Think of your long-term health. Yeah, there's an old saying, your health is your wealth. And I'd say it to any fighter. If there's a fighter there who's made enough money to sustain themselves for the rest of their lives and the rest of their kids' lives, they've done what they need to do in the sport, maybe there's desire in you to keep going, but realistically, why should you? If you've made the bag, if you've made the money, and you've done everything you wanted to do, why risk your health further long term, especially if you've had a couple of really, really hard fights, to keep going? And that's just kind of my way of looking at it, because I'm sure there are fighters who stayed on a little bit longer than they should have, and I'm sure now they regret it, because maybe their speech is not quite the way it should be, maybe their health isn't at where it should be, and maybe it would have been different if they decided 2 or 3 fights earlier, when they could have walked away and still been set for life. Right now is the right time, rather than carry on. Just something I'm just comes into my mind. I've always been like that when I look at fighters, and I've always been someone who learns, or I'd say learns, I'm not a fighter myself, but I'd always say, if I was in that situation, just think of this person, or think of that fighter, or remember the story of this fighter. He stayed around 1 or 2 fights too long, and look at him now. I'd be cognizant of that. So whatever Deontay Wilder has to do anyway, you got to respect his choice. So if he is thinking of walking away, big up. It's been a great career, and I've enjoyed watching him every step of the way. So that's my thoughts on everything. That's review of the week in a nutshell. Hopefully I didn't go over the half-hour mark, because I was trying to keep this one a bit shorter, because it's late now and I'm really, really tired, so I didn't want to be talking too much. So anyway, hope you have a good Monday. Leave it here. Smash the like button if you could. Get you through your Monday, work day, wherever you are in the world. Hope I'm getting you through a Monday. If it's Monday, wherever it is. I'm sure it's Monday. Yeah, it's Monday everywhere. What am I saying? But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell as well. Help your boy out. We're getting there. We're not far off 6k. We're not far off 6k. We're nearly at 1,920 nearly. We should be there probably tomorrow. So not far. About 80 subs. Can we do it? Of course we can. People, for now, I'll talk to you. Peace.